There are a ton of unknown mechanics and misunderstood concepts in Overwatch that are not intuitive or obvious to both newer and veteran players. Today I'm going to shed some light on 5 somewhat advanced unknown tips you should know, powered by the Predator Training Room. Hey, what's going on guys? My name is KarQ and let's start with tip number 1, the Melee Lingering Hitbox. Basically what this means is that when you press melee, there is a small window frame where the melee is active and anyone that touches your character's melee animation will take damage. When you activate melee and see the hit marker, you have a little window where you can flick your crosshair and hit additional targets. The very obvious examples you probably know of are Reinhardt and Brigitte, in which you can start the swing on one side and hit enemies off your screen if you move your crosshairs. However, outside of these two heroes, every hero in the game can flick their melee, and the most practical in-game example of this is when Zarya uses her Graviton Surge and lumps up enemies together. You'll often see Zarya's pump out her secondary fires into flick melee cancels to maximize the AoE damage. Now onto tip number 2, body blocking. Body blocking isn't a new concept since we see the mechanic used in many team-based games from other genres. For Overwatch, the tip here is to remind you that body blocking can be tactically used for both your teammates and the enemies. For example, using your invulnerability from Zenyatta to block the charge from a Reinhardt, or using your own Zarya bubble as demonstrated by Choi Hyobin in this clip.
I get. Oh,
holy crap, Zarya, you're insane. Oh my god.
He didn't have his ally bubble available on cooldown, so he instinctively used his own bubble and body to block the Diva Bomb and save his Ana. This is the kind of stuff you should be thinking about when possible. On the flip side, body blocking an enemy has its own strengths and has been personally used against me on ladder to block small chokes and doorways.
What the? He's body blocking me, I couldn't go!
And it's been used in professional play.
For Bazooka Puppy's big anti-nade, but you do have the self-destruct from having cool finds too!
Now you may not have caught it at first, but Funny Astro, the Ana player, sees the enemy McCree and Zen coming his way. They have a Lucio beat applied to them, and he knows he's not going to be dueling them 1v2, so what does he do? He makes the big heads up play here by body blocking them just before the wall so they would die to the Diva Bomb because he understood that they wanted to retreat out of line of sight. It's the little things like these that you've got to keep in mind when you're playing your Overwatch games that could easily be the difference between winning or losing the point. Alright, moving on to tip number 3, using sound advantage. An underestimated tool that players don't take advantage of in Overwatch is sound. I understand if you're casually playing quick play, arcade, and even competitive sometimes, and you like to jam out to your lo-fi, hip-hop 24/7 chill beats to study to. However, if you're set on climbing and becoming better at the game, turn off all the outside music, even in-game music, and listen to hero sounds, footsteps, and ability cues, and I guarantee you'll drastically improve your reaction and counterplay to certain abilities. For example, you'll have a better time hearing and reacting to the Doomfist seismic slamming when he comes from Narnia, or hearing the Sombra unstealth for the EMP. Now offensively, here are some ways to manipulate sound to your advantage. For one, footsteps are actually quite loud for most of the heroes in the game except Zenyatta, who doesn't make any. What some players do is spam the crouch button as they move in sneaky flanks, which can help muffle the sound quite a bit. It's very common practice for Tracer players to do this. Here's a comparison of walking versus crouch walking. Additionally, anytime you fall from high ground, whether you want to drop on an enemy or flank, you should not jump down on them because you will make landing noise. Instead, just fall so you have a jump available and use it just before you land to dampen the sound. It's quite strong on heroes like Winston or Tracer. Now for the big tip number 4 and 5, I'm going to group them together as environmental kills for ultimate charge. In Overwatch, you may have noticed a strategy called a tactical reset, in which remaining enemies in a lost team fight jump off the map in order to respawn with their team to prevent staggering and to prevent any further ultimate charge for the other team. Now falling off the map is called an environmental kill, and if you are credited with an environmental kill, it gives you all the ultimate charge relative to the enemy's remaining HP when they fall off. Now the way most people understand environmental kills is that an enemy needs to be affected by some sort of knockback or hard movement inhibiting ability, or CC, as the last effect before they fall off the map. Shooting them as they fall off doesn't count, you're not displacing or CCing them. It has to be a hard movement inhibiting ability, and that would be stuff like Sleep Dart, Flashbangs, Hacker EMP, and others, and knockbacks would be Sound Wave, Concussive Blast, Coach Gun, and one you may not know, Melee. Yes, a melee attack from almost every hero all technically count as a knockback because you do slightly get your movement displaced. It's subtle, but it's there. One thing I do want to note is that there are actually some inconsistencies for every hero on what counts as a knockback or hard movement inhibiting ability, but I'll make a dedicated video on environmental kills and one environmental kill credit tip for every hero or something to go over all the possible scenarios, so be on the lookout for that. Anyways, now that you have some context, tip number 4 is that you should always look to be the last person to tag an enemy with a knockback or movement inhibiting ability when an enemy is trying to reset. Let's say you've won the fight. The enemy Roadhog is the last one alive, and he's like, alright, I'm just going to jump off the map to reset. The obvious example is that if you're Pharah, you should try to land a concussive blast at the last second. A more obscure example that you may not have thought of now that you understand this concept is that, let's say you're on Tracer. You should 100% be chasing that Roadhog, triple blink if you have to, and try to land a melee on him as he's falling off because, as we mentioned before, it counts as a knockback and you can be that much closer to a pulse bomb. Now for when you're the Roadhog in this example, tip number 5 for resetting properly is that you should never just walk off the map. You need to always press your jump before you go off to overwrite the enemy's last movement knockback ability. Obviously, if you get triple blinked on by a Tracer and get meleeed while you're already falling like in tip number 4, you can't help it. But to minimize all risk of giving environmental kill credit to the enemy, always remember to manually jump off. If you jump, you have overwritten their knockback ability with your own movement, which was the jump, and you cancel it out. I have one last example in a real game situation from my friend Fitzy here in a high-ranked game. He got slept by the enemy Ana, which again counts as a hard movement inhibiting ability. His team lost the fight, he decided to go off the map to reset with his team, but he forgot to manually jump off, and thus the enemy Ana received the kill credit. Not a huge deal since he was only at about 49 health in this situation, but again, imagine the implications of this if you're a tank with 600 HP like Roadhog. This can be absolutely game-changing for team's ultimate economy. Now again, I will dedicate a full video on environmental kill credit very soon. I'll link it in the description if you're watching this video many days, months, or years since this video upload, but that's all for this one. Big shout out to the Predator Training Room for partnering up with me. Please check out their website, articles, and YouTube channel for more strategic gaming content from Overwatch and other titles. I seriously hope you guys learned something from this and you enjoyed it. Take care and I'll see you guys in the next video.